Welcome to part 1 of chapter 1 of my read-through of my Catholic superhero novel. I already read through this chapter one time on my old audio equipment, and then I received a very generous loan of a much better microphone from my sister and brother-in-law, so we're going to go through it again with the better equipment. That said, I've already done a lot of editing because of that first read-through, so I don't know if there's going to be much that needs to be taken care of. Maybe you'll see something and you'll point it out in the comments. I would be very appreciative. Anyway, let's begin. Chapter 1, Morning Show. Matthew checked the calendar on the wall. It was day 807. Okay, almost the full menu today, he mumbled to himself. The walls of his prep room were lined with shelves stocked with necessities. There were toiletries, water bottles, medical kits, everything he needed to care for Maggie. He carefully packed the smaller of the 2 duffel bags on the table in the center of the room. The sensors sewn into the bag were a pain to replace. He was especially careful with the IV kit and Maggie's change of clothes. Matthew grabbed a small, insulated lunchbox from under the table and went to the refrigerator to retrieve Maggie's meal. He put it in the lunchbox, then got an ice pack from the freezer and placed it inside too. Finally, he closed the lunchbox, placed it in the duffel bag, and zipped the bag shut. He consulted the checklist on the wall. "Yes, got that. Yep," Matthew said as he scanned the list. When he was satisfied, he shut off the lights and left the prep room. He went to his front hall and appraised his appearance in the mirror that hung there. His mic was still in place, and his makeup did a decent job of hiding how tired he was, but he could still see the dark spots under his eyes. Over 2 years, Matthew wondered to himself. He shook his head. Can't be helped. Maggie's counting on you. The thought of her made him smile, but then the familiar weariness crept over him. Matthew yawned and then reached out his hand to make a portal with his power. It led to the Jenny Kenny Show Studios green room. The gravitational anchors he had left there earlier were still pristine, and the portal opened easily. He stepped through it, sealed it, and took a seat. It was less than 10 seconds before the stage door opened and a harried producer came through. "Oh, thank God you're back," the producer said. He had the look of a middle-aged man who was balding poorly. "Praise his name," Matthew added with a smile. "What?" the producer asked, confused. "Thank God and praise his name," Matthew repeated. He stood up. "Okay, sure," the producer said. He examined Matthew. "Mic and makeup still look good. Let's turn it on. You're on in a minute." "Plenty of time," Matthew said. He slipped off his jacket, and the producer made sure the battery pack was secure on Matthew's belt. He handed him an earpiece, which Matthew inserted into his left ear. He then put his jacket back on. "I wish we had time for a little more makeup," the producer said. "Careful, you'll hurt my feelings," Matthew joked. "You're supposed to be invulnerable," the producer replied. "Not my heart," Matthew said with as serious a look as he could muster. The producer shook his head. "You're just like Jenny said you'd be," he said. "Oh, really? What did she say?" Matthew asked. "No time to tell you. You're on." The producer led Matthew to the edge of the set. He could hear Jenny's voice coming through the monitor. "And now for America's favorite superhero, Mr. Matthew Ward," she said. The studio audience applauded vigorously. Matthew grinned. He loved applause. He rounded the corner and stepped into the lights with a smile on his face and his hand in the air. He was squinting, but could still see where Jenny was standing between 2 plush chairs. He went to her and lightly embraced her. "So good to see you, Jenny," he said. "Likewise," she replied. They sat down in their respective chairs. Matthew's eyes were still adjusting, but he did not stop smiling. "Thank you so much for coming on the show today," Jenny said. "My pleasure," Matthew said. "Technically, I am here as a government liaison, but I can't really talk about the work I do for the government, so let's just chat." "I do have some questions for you," Jenny began. "Please, go ahead," Matthew offered. His eyes had finally adjusted enough for him to clearly see Jenny's face. Her red hair was pulled back in her signature high ponytail, and her expression was one of polite interest. "Why do you care so much about Codename Task?" Jenny asked. Matthew was prepared for the question, but he had not expected it so early in the interview. He kept smiling and tried to deflect. We've barely said hello and you're already throwing hardballs. Don't you want to know how my family is doing? No offense, but my viewers are more interested in your answer to that question than what your siblings are up to. Jenny smirked, but inclined her head that way she always did when she was serious. Oh, I don't know, Jenny, Matthew said. He turned to the studio audience. My baby sister has a lot of followers. Any Faustina fans here? A handful of people shouted Faustina's name, and a few more clapped. Most did not respond. My viewers are a different demographic, Mr. Ward. Jenny raised her chin slightly as she said it. That was her I win look. Mr. Ward? Matthew asked with mock offense. We went to college together, Jenny. You can call me Matthew. And you really should start with a question about Faustina. You know it's her birthday today. Jenny closed her eyes and inhaled. All right. What did you get Faustina for her birthday? Can't tell. It's a surprise, Matthew said. He wore a big, dumb grin. But definitely not a refrigerator. The audience laughed, and Jenny smiled, this time genuinely. She's the last person in the world who needs one, Jenny said. Ice powers are pretty useful. She's very popular at parties, Matthew said, and I imagine at bars too, though she's a couple years away from that. That's enough about your youngest sister, Jenny said. Matthew noticed her expression had changed as he was speaking. A producer must have told her to get back to the first question. Okay, which sibling should we talk about next? He asked as he rested his face in his hand. None of them, Jenny said. I want to talk about your relationship with Codename Task. Ever since the events that led to the creation of the phenomenon that surrounds her, you visited her every day to care for her. Matthew's expression hardened. I hate using code names for children of the outpouring. We have real names. Code names are dehumanizing. Codename Task is a criminal. She has hurt dozens, maybe hundreds of people, irreparably by many accounts. Memories gone, minds broken. In Kyoto, I know everything she did, Jenny, Matthew interrupted. Maybe better than anyone except her. And my company has been at the forefront of providing aid and support to her victims. He paused. Her name is Margaret Ashling Byrne. She's the second known child of the outpouring, after me. And she is wanted for capital crimes, Matthew, Jenny said. Everyone in the world knows about your oath not to kill anyone, but why not just let her die? Matthew inhaled sharply. Do you know how many children of the outpouring have been killed, Jenny? Do you know how many were taken before they were even born by those butchers at Birthright Health Solutions? I know, Matthew. Then you should know that I am going to save and protect everyone I can, child of the outpouring or not. I will never abandon that principle. So it all comes down to principle, then. There's nothing else to your relationship with Codename Task? Matthew could not tell her the truth about his relationship with Maggie, not all of it at least. He thought for a moment, and then found a way to proceed. Jenny, he began intensely, I want people to see that every human life has dignity, has value. Jesus said to care for the sick, to visit the imprisoned. That's what I'm doing. Well, you were the one who took Codename Task prisoner. Matthew blinked. I was, he said. That makes her welfare my responsibility. We're coming up to audience Q&A, Jenny said, so please, let me thank you for your time, Matthew. You're welcome, Matthew said. It is always exciting to talk with you. Jenny turned to a camera. It's your chance to be part of the show. Post your question to our social media accounts, and we just might ask Mr. Ward to answer it. We'll be back after this quick message from our sponsors. All right, we'll end part 1 of chapter 1 right there. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, I ask you to please like, share, subscribe, and especially leave a comment with your positive or critical feedback. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Part 2 of Chapter 1 will be released on Friday. Thank you again, and God bless.
Ooh, ancient province.